Titanic is a 1997 American epic romantic disaster film written and directed by James Cameron. Incorporating both historical and fictionalized aspects, it is based on accounts of the sinking of RMS Titanic in 1912. Struggling artist Jack and wealthy debutante Rose fall in love aboard the unsinkable Titanic, but their romance faces tragedy when the ship strikes an iceberg. All right, so I have finally watched the classic Titanic, sort of like heralded as one of the greatest films of all time, and one, of course, factually one of the highest grossing movies of all time as well. So I'm glad I finally got to see it, and this also came at a kind of particular time in my life as well because I believe, and I'll have to double check. Okay, so it was 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, where there was an expedition, the Titan, which is, I guess, this like expedition submersible sort of machine, and it was taking an expedition to see the remains of the Titanic, and it had like 5 passengers inside of it, and it imploded. And so this is that sort of, tragedy has been likened to the tragedy of Titanic. Of course, obviously a lot more smaller scale, but the fact that, that expedition was going to see the remains of the Titanic, and those people also lost their lives. It's very morbid, and it's also kind of poetic in a very, again, morbid way. But yeah, I mean, I guess ever since that event happened, I've actually been wanting to see Titanic just to sort of understand and comprehend the lives that were lost in this huge scale disaster as well. And I guess also see the, highly regarded love story between Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet in this film. I mean, I've been wanting to see this film for a long time, and so I'll just get straight into it. This is a very deeply moving cinematic experience that leaves lasting emotional impact, especially during the sinking scenes towards like the last act, which really highlights the scale of human tragedy. It really is not like, it's PG-13 of course, but like it doesn't hold back on showing the full-scale tragedy. Women, children, couples are all literally babies as well. Just it's quite sad in a way, tragic for sure. And this is not net. I mean, the movie itself is, of course, so it's the main gist of this movie is actually a fictional love story between Jack and Rose, which I'm not sure if is even historically accurate. People say it's inaccurate, which, I mean, it makes sense. It's a fictional relationship. But it serves as a really compelling emotional anchor against the backdrop of this real-life disaster. And I think it's quite an interesting choice. Obviously, it's weird for me to like critique this film that's already, been known as a great masterpiece of a film, and, was made 20 something years ago. But I don't know, I still find it's kind of interesting that James Cameron chose to go down a romantic image route, and the backdrop is this huge disaster. Like, I think it's definitely a weird juxtaposition and weird contrast to use, but somehow it kind of works. The film cinematography is breathtaking, and James Cameron's meticulous attention to the historical detail, to the interior of the ship is very masterful. And it makes the recreation of the Titanic both visually grand and emotionally immersive as well. Apparently, the scene where the grand staircase room, which is like the first floor room, I believe, for like the elites, the flooding scene, apparently that was all one take because the furniture was going to get destroyed. So, at the end of the day, the production process behind this film it had to be very meticulous. It was very masterful by James Cameron. And I don't think anyone could pull it off as well as he did. And obviously nowadays he's making like more meticulous and ambitious projects like Avatar. The teaser trailer for his third Avatar film was released in theaters. So obviously he's been going down an amazing route as a director and as a filmmaker. Performances-wise, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, I thought, delivered both powerful and chemistry-filled performances, Winslet especially. And they were supported by a strong cast, including Billy Zane, who's the antagonist, and Kathy Bates, who, honestly, the projects that I've seen her in so far, I've really loved her performance. I love her as an actress as well. I really love Kathy Bates. I think she's hilarious. Even when her character isn't intended to be, just her mannerisms, I really like. But yeah, I mean, I can see it now. It's clear as day. DiCaprio got snubbed by the Oscars. He definitely deserves an Oscar nomination. I do think Winslet delivered the stronger performance of the dynamic between the two. But I mean, DiCaprio, he still was like, it's weird. I honestly probably wouldn't consider him even as a leading actor, but maybe even as a supporting character in a way, because of course the story revolves around the two of them, but it mostly revolves around Rose in a way, and you learn a lot more about her history and her familial lineage as well than you really do about Jack, who's kind of just, it does at times feel like he's sort of inserted in as this, charming boy that sort of has a mysterious past. Like, he just moves around, I guess. He calls himself like a tumbleweed at one point. So, but then again, I kind of like that mysterious allure, but I can also see how it did feel like he was sort of like pushed into this story, just in a slight way. But anyways, yeah, amazing performances for them too. I also think if you have any pre-existing interest in the Titanic, like when I heard about the Titan submersible implosion, but also if you like read about it in textbooks or just curious in general, the film does add a lot of emotional depth to these like very known facts. Genuinely, like when I started watching the film, I had no idea that a lot of the more iconic scenes were just like flashback sequences. Apparently it like shifts back and forth from present day of these like treasure hunters trying to, scavenge the remains of the Titanic. And apparently, like, I didn't know that the whole like 1912 scenes were just a flashback sequences of a monologue that the older Rose is giving. And so I definitely think it's cool how they do switch back. It does warrant, I don't know if it does warrant a longer runtime. This is 3 hours and 15 minutes, but I do think the runtime, the film does still remain engaging throughout, and it balances romance, suspense, drama. I don't think it drags at any particular moment. Yeah, and I do think the film definitely takes certain liberties with certain timelines and events, such as, of course, the fictional romance, but also like the sinking duration. I think it was like, well, it's actually funny because the sinking apparently was like 2 hours and 40 minutes. But then someone noted online that if you were to like remove all the present day scenes and just keep the 1912 scenes, all of those together are actually 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is cool, of course. But yeah, I mean, I never really felt like it was rushed once the Titanic hit the iceberg. But a lot of things happen in like the span of an hour, and it does make you feel like the ship was sinking like within an hour, even though it actually took like almost 3 hours. But another thing that I want to point out, and I also found this online though, and I think this is really, really cool from James Cameron, the iceberg collision, in real life, it took 37 seconds, and that is the same duration as the scene in this movie. So that I think is definitely something noteworthy, and that I really, really, really like. But yeah, I mean, this film overall, it just resonates strongly with audiences, whether or not you don't, or whether or not you like this movie, it still has an audience. And it often brings many people to tears. I wasn't especially like emotionally moved as this film as I thought I'd be, but it was still a very emotionally and harrowing movie to watch, especially when you account for the real life loss of over 1,500 lives. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. You can't just not acknowledge that. The score for this film is beautiful by James Horner, especially the "My Heart Will Go On," I believe is the name of the song. That adds to the film's emotional power and core, and it's very iconic in its own right. I think very few scores of a film can have presence on its own, but I think this score definitely does have presence on its own. It's up there with probably like Schindler's List or something, as far as like iconic scores. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the highest grossing films of all time. Titanic has definitely cemented its place in cinematic history, and it continues to be a beloved classic across all generations, really. I don't doubt that this will still be a movie talked about 30 years down the road. And, even though it has some cheesy dialogue here and there, I think one dialogue that was unintentionally kind of hilarious was when Rose says to Jack, and mind you, this is like, the ship is like literally like here now. So it's already broken into two. The bottom part of the ship has already sunk into the ocean, which I think was the Atlantic Ocean. This is happening. But then this other ship where Jack and Rose are, and they're at the very tippy top. Rose turns to Jack as they're hanging on for dear life, and she says, "This is where we first met." And I'm like, "Excuse me, miss, but you're literally this close to dying." And so, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I think her character is like 17, Jack's 20, but I can also see how that it's kind of eye-rolling dialogue sometimes, like, also like, paint me like one of your French girls and stuff like that. It's just those types of dialogues that, it's weird. But yeah, I definitely think this is like a perfect film to watch with someone else. I watched this film alone, which I'm not sure if it was the right choice, but I still enjoyed it. But I definitely think this is a perfect film to watch with someone who also appreciates romance, but also tragic stories and emotional tragic stories. This is a very quintessential sad tragedy movie done right. It really is more of a romantic tragedy. It's honestly, it could be likened to that of Romeo and Juliet. I don't know if that's a crazy comparison, but I just made it. So, especially DiCaprio, who also played Romeo in a film adaptation, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, I mean, overall, this film it will always be heralded as like a cinematic masterpiece. But I'm gonna give Titanic an 8 out of 10. Just, maybe not as like I wasn't really brought to tears. I wasn't, as emotionally impacted as maybe other people were. Again, cheesy dialogue here and there. I think some also, I don't know, someone pointed out online, and I'm trying to remember it too, but like some props looked very fake at certain points, like during the dinner scene that Jack has with Rose's, like family and friends. And of course, the runtime. I'm okay with like 3-hour runtimes, but then when a movie's over 3 hours, you really, really have to question if what happens in the movie warrants that. And apparently back in the day, this had occurred over 2 VHS tapes. So I don't know. Anyways, I think 8 out of 10 is still a good score, and I still really, really like this film. I think it's a film of of a previous generation and of our generation, and for future generations for sure. This will stand the test of time. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.